Chapter 656. The power of the gray light beam locked onto Yi Chen, making the space around Yi Chen seem to be frozen. Not to mention escaping, he couldn't even move. Under this blade attack, there was only one way to escape, and that was to fight back with an attack. There was no second way. It would be impossible for Yi Chen to not be shocked. But after the shock, his expression returned to normal. Originally, he hadn't planned to reveal his most powerful attack, the Gold Fury. It wasn't a life-and-death battle, and it wouldn't be wise to reveal his most powerful attack. As the saying went, one more trump card meant one more chance to save his life. And after using it, the effect would be halved. But now he had to use it. Gold Fury. Feeling the terrifying blade pressure coming towards him, Yi Chen lowered his center of gravity and held his sword with both hands. He raised it up high, and then slashed down with all his might. Boom! The golden ripples twisted and elongated, like the traces left behind by a large ship passing by on a lake. In front of the golden ripples was a perfect arc. The arc was like a side blade, following the gaps, cutting through the gray light pillar. The hundreds of meters thick and thousands of meters long gray light beam was cut open in an instant. The power dissipated, causing the two halves of the gray light beam to scatter and fill the entire sky. In the middle of the sky, there was a smear of gold. It was this smear of gold that had split the gray sky in half, like yin and yang. After the gray light disappeared, everyone opened their eyes and looked towards the battlefield. On the Nine-Dragon Lake, a shallow mark was disappearing. Following the mark, everyone found Dugaju. Right now Dugaju was in a very bad shape. His body had crashed into the lake, creating a huge pit that was several meters wide and dozens of meters deep. Dugaju was lying in the middle of the pit, covered in mud, and his hair was wet. The armor on his chest had caved in, and the light was dim. Seeing Duguju's current state, gasping sounds could be heard everywhere. No one had expected that Duguju, who was about to make a comeback, would end up like this. The power of that last blade attack had made every single one of them feel a trace of despair. Depending on the distance, the degree of despair would be different. But without a doubt, that blade attack of Duguju's had the destructive power to instantly kill a group of experts. They had thought that Dugaju would be able to turn the tables, but the result was the opposite. Arg! Dugaju spat out a mouthful of blood. He didn't even have the strength to stand up. He tried to raise his eyes and look towards the sky. In his sight, Yi Chen, who was dressed in blue, was standing high in the sky. His long sword was already sheathed, and his long black hair was fluttering in the wind. At the same time, everyone's eyes fell on Yi Chen. Compared to Dugaju, Yi Chen was unscathed. Those who were observant could see that there were no traces of his clothes being torn. In other words, in this battle, Yi Chen had completely suppressed Dugaju. Even when Dugaju fell, Yi Chen didn't feel the slightest threat. This is too scary. Even someone as strong as Dugaju didn't have a chance to fight back against Yi Chen. Dugaju can absorb the power of despair, but Yi Chen has already surpassed despair. Everyone was discussing. Although they couldn't see the details clearly, they could tell that Dugaju was completely defeated by Yi Chen in every aspect. In terms of experience, Yi Chen wasn't lacking. In terms of battle techniques, Yi Chen had a complete advantage. Every time Dugaju used the Despair Blade, to increase his battle power, it would be neutralized by Yi Chen's sword and hit his weak spot. Many people sighed in their hearts. It was a tragedy for Dugaju to encounter Yi Chen. If it was someone else who was as strong as Yi Chen, even if he couldn't win, he wouldn't have lost so badly. In the hands of Yi Chen, Dugaju was being suppressed from the beginning until the end, and he didn't have his own rhythm. This is Yi Chen. Li Daoxian and the other two hadn't seen Yi Chen for about 2 years. They originally thought that even if Yi Chen's strength was very high, it wouldn't be enough to surprise them. After all, they had already been shocked countless times. But now they still couldn't help but exclaim. If it was a few years ago, they could still see Yi Chen's back. Now they couldn't even see his shadow. All they could see were the traces and glory he left behind. Absolute strength can disregard everything. Bai Wuxia glanced at Dugaju and murmured to himself. Being able to make Bai Wuxia mention the absolute power would not be easy at all. The so-called absolute power was not the level of cultivation. Otherwise, only the surreal king would have the right to talk about the absolute power, because he was the #1 warrior of the whole true spirit continent. By Wuxia's eyes, the absolute power was the highest standard of power evaluation. For normal people, only the profound and will power would be qualified. But the power was not that important. Being able to use all of it would be the most important. When the power difference was not that big, the profound and will power could be ignored. What would be left would be the quality, battle talent, and understanding of battling. Being powerful in every aspect would be the absolute power. Among the same level warriors, they would be invincible. It was like a wooden bucket. If there was no shortcut, the bucket would be complete and could be filled with water. But if there was a shortcut, the water would not be able to be filled, and there would always be some loss. By Wuxia was very clear that the reason he was able to become the leader of the top 5 young warriors was not because of his great talent or comprehensive ability. The others were not weaker than him, but in terms of absolute power, he was more powerful than the others. Even if it was Dugaju, he could still see some flaws. But, with the appearance of Yi Chen, he had realized for the first time that Yi Chen's absolute power was even more powerful than his. Of course, everyone had to move forward. Although his absolute power was similar to Yi Chen's, in terms of potential, he had almost reached his limit. The chance of him reaching the life and death realm in this lifetime was not that big. On the other hand, Dugaju might be able to reach the life and death realm. This was the difference in potential. Between the same level, it was about the absolute power. In a lifetime, it was about the potential. The higher the potential, the faster the power would increase. This is so embarrassing. Let's go. Su Yuan from the Earth Sword School looked embarrassed. Before, he and Xie Baiting were not talking loudly, but they were not being secretive either. So there would definitely be people nearby who could hear them. And now, Yi Chen had won without any suspense. No matter how thick his skin was, he could not help but feel a bit embarrassed. Shoo! Shoo! The 2 seniors left the 9-Dragon Mountain first. Su Yuan and Xie Baiting's departure did not attract much attention. Most of the people's attention was on Dugaju and Yi Chen. Putting a pellet into his mouth, Dugaju activated his martial art to refine part of the medicinal power. Only then did he manage to stand up with difficulty, wobbling in the middle of the huge pit. Yi Chen, I, Dugaju, have never lost before in my generation. You are the first one to beat me. Dugaju took a deep breath and said slowly. Hearing this, the crowd was even more shocked. Before, because they were too excited, they did not think too much. But after Dugaju's reminder, they all recalled Dugaju's achievements. Dugaju had shown his monstrous talent since he was young. He had fought thousands of battles, big and small, but he had never lost once. The only times he had a draw were against the other monstrous talent, Dantai Mingyue. Other than Dantai Mingyue, Dugaju had always had the last laugh. And Yi Chen had broken Dugaju's record of winning all the time. He was also the first person to officially beat Dugaju. Most importantly, both of them were monstrous talents, but they were also each other's stepping stones. When one fell, the other would rise to glory. In the first battle, the winner was Yi Chen. In the sky, Yi Chen said, "Among the same generation, I have never met a worthy opponent either." It was a simple sentence, but it shocked a lot of people. They did not know if Yi Chen meant it on purpose, because this sentence included Dugaju as well. In other words, until now, Yi Chen had not lost even once, even if his opponent was Dugaju. On an unremarkable little mountain, Li Daoxian sighed and said, "He has never been defeated before." In the past, he was somewhat lucky to have not been defeated. Now he is undefeated because of the general trend. In the same generation, there is no one who can defeat him. Not losing when one was weak depended on luck. For example, when Yi Chen was still at the condensing reality realm, or clasping Yuan realm, he would most likely lose when he came to the sky martial region. As he became more and more powerful, the luck factor gradually disappeared. Without luck, among the same generation, there was no one who could beat him. Against an undefeated opponent, one of them will definitely lose. Too bad I lost. A bitter look appeared on Dugaju's face. It was his first time losing, so it would be impossible to say that he did not have any negative emotions. But this loss seemed to have unlocked some kind of shackle for him, making him feel relaxed. From now on, he would be even more motivated. Before he was trying to not lose, but now, he was trying to beat Yi Chen. The former was for himself, and the latter was also for himself. Everyone will face failure eventually. Wait for me in front. Standing up straight, Dugaju's chi was very weak, but his aura did not decrease. Instead it increased. A wave of blade intent that was full of explosive power exploded out, seeming like it was going to break and rise again. Everyone was shocked. In their eyes, Dugaju seemed to be even more powerful than before. Could it be that there was no limit to his potential? Good Dugaju, good Yi Chen. The elder of the pavilion, Gao Chong Tian, laughed out loud. The annual ranking list would be updated next month. Gao Chong Tian was in charge of the young generation, but this time, it was not the young generation that was in the limelight, but two young warriors. Of course, the young generation was also included in the list, and Gao Chong Tian was in charge of it as well. Dugaju, although you have lost to Yi Chen, according to the current information, you have the right to be in the top 5, maybe even higher. Gao Chong Tian said, if Dugaju is in the top 5, wouldn't that mean that Xie Baiting will be squeezed out? Someone looked confused. Gao Chong Tian could tell that everyone was confused, so he said, the ranking changes every year. After this, Dugaju will only get stronger. Therefore, there should be no problem for him to be in the top 5. Then, Gao Chong Tian turned his head and looked at Yi Chen. Yi Chen, if I am not wrong, this year's ranking will be either number 1 or number 2. What? Gao Chong Tian's words stunned everyone present. The number 2 was still acceptable, but the number 1 was the head elder of the Void Martial School, the head of the 9 great martial institutions. People called him the Axe Master. With 2 words as his title, one could imagine how powerful he was. Normally, many people would want to have 2 words as their title, such as the Sword Master, the Blade Master, or the Spear Master. Unfortunately, there were only a few who could have 2 words as their title, because the meaning behind it was extraordinary. It meant that one was the absolute number 1 in a certain field. The Axe Master was the number 1 among all the Axe Masters, and no one could surpass him. Little brother, I will give you a title. I wonder if you dare to accept it. Gao Chong Tian ignored the other's expressions, and said with a smile, Oh, what title? Yi Chen asked. Sword Master. Chapter 657. Gao Chongtian's words had shocked everyone. Even Yin Fengfeng and Hai Wuya frowned, knowing that it would not be easy to be called the Sword Master. Sword Master. Yi Chen was shocked. There were a lot of master-level warriors in the world. Some of them used weapons, such as blades, spears, swords, whips, hammers, staffs, axes, and so on. Some of them were bare-handed and specialized in their palms, fists, or kicks. The number 1 in each area would have the right to fight for the title, such as Blade Master, Spear Master, Axe Master, Head Master, Fist Master, and Leg Master. But it was undeniable that among all of them, the Sword Master and Blade Master were the hardest to get, because most of them were sword or blade users. Even so, there were not that many who could get the title, and there were less than 5 of them in the whole True Spirit continent. As a matter of fact, it was not that there was no first place among sword masters and saber masters. If there was a battle of life and death, the first and second place would definitely be decided. However, no one dared to call themselves sword master or saber master, because once they used this title, it meant that they looked down on others, and would have to face challenges again and again. If the gap was not big, it was very likely that they would be defeated and become a joke. Therefore, without an absolute advantage, no one dared to call themselves sword master or saber master. If they wanted to use it, sure, but they would have to beat the others to admit their title. Of course, even if they did, it would only be temporary. Once someone thought that they could challenge you, they would come again. In other words, the title of Sword Master was not only a huge honor, but also a huge trouble. After all, if you could beat all of the master-level warriors in the world, there would always be people who would not accept it. You would then become the #1 target of all the master-level warriors in the world. Yi Chen said, Sword Master. It is indeed a big temptation, but you still cannot give me this title. Gao Changtian laughed. Of course, I cannot represent everyone in the world. But I have the right to give someone a title. As for whether you can keep this title or not, it has nothing to do with me. Plus, I am only asking if you dare to take it or not. If you do not, then just pretend that I did not say anything. With Yi Chen's personality, he wouldn't be so reckless. Li Daoxian had some understanding of Yi Chen. In his opinion, Yi Chen wouldn't take this hot potato. Yan Qihua and Bing Ling nodded slightly. They didn't think that Yi Chen would do that either. Alright, since you asked me if I dare or not, then why wouldn't I dare? From today onwards, the title of Sword Master belongs to me. Yi Chen's eyes flashed with sharpness as he sternly said. Oh, Gao Changtian was shocked. Although he was the one who suggested this title, he didn't think that Yi Chen would dare to accept the title of Sword Master. Moreover, he did it so naturally and without a trace of fear, as if this decision was nothing to him. Too arrogant. Although it's true that Yi Chen is strong, the title of Sword Master isn't something he can become just because he wants to. Just wait and see, he won't be able to keep it for long. The title of Sword Master hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. Maybe in a few years, Yi Chen will have the right to become Sword Master, but not now. Indeed, it's not hard to obtain the title of Sword Master, but it's hard to keep it. Once you lose it, you will become the laughing stock of the world. At this moment, the crowd was in an uproar. Those who supported Yi Chen couldn't help but frown. Their impression of Yi Chen was greatly reduced. Most people thought that Yi Chen was young and frivolous, accepting the title after being tempted by Gao Changtian. After all, the title of Sword Master was a supreme honor to all sword users in the world. Who wouldn't want to become a Sword Master? But without strength, it would be arrogance. Defeating Dugaju didn't mean that he was better than all the other sword users in the world. Li Daoxian and the other two were shocked. They thought that they had some understanding of Yi Chen, but it seemed like they knew far less about Yi Chen. Did I hear it wrong? Hai Wei mumbled to himself. Yan Fengfeng thought about it. We were all wrong about him. This is the real Yi Chen. Unable to get rid of the temptation of fame after all. A cold light flashed through Lu Xiaoyou's eyes. His title was the Sword Master, but there was a Ji in between, so it was not the real Sword Master. He sneered inwardly at Yi Chen for daring to accept the title. On the side, Bai Wuxia shook his head. I don't think so. Hearing him, Lu Xiaoyu looked over at Bai Wuxia. Bai Wuxia said slowly, people who are not powerful enough to call themselves Sword Master are arrogant. However, people who are powerful enough to call themselves Sword Master are courageous. Without a doubt, Yi Chen already has the power. Even compared to those old sword artists who are over 250 years old and are not in the master-level warrior ranking, he would not be any weaker. Calling himself Sword Master in this kind of situation would require a lot of courage that normal people would not have. If he did not dare to accept the title of Sword Master, then it would be disappointing, because he would be afraid that he would not be able to keep the title, afraid that he would fail. Therefore, his heart of sword art would not be pure and flawless. As for fame and fortune, everyone would have it. If one could not face the fame and fortune, then he would not be able to face himself. Lu Xiaoyu, I can see that your sword art is slightly unstable because of Yi Chen's appearance. Lu Xiaoyu was speechless. No one knew that he had lost to Bai Wuxia before. He was the only one who knew about Bai Wuxia's power. When Bai Wuxia and Xia Hozuan battled, only he could tell that Bai Wuxia had not used all of his power yet. Crazy. He dares to accept the title of Sword Master? Bai Minghui could not help but shiver. If he can keep the title, then I will not be his enemy from now on. Situ Hao's expression changed a couple of times as he thought to himself. Yi Chen, you better take back the title of Sword Master. Right now, you do not have the power to take it. As the voice was heard, 3 human figures flew out. They were the Fire Sword Master, who was ranked 29-33, and the Shadow Sword Master, who was ranked 45. Among the 72 people on the ranking, there were dozens of them who used swords. Yi Chen said lightly, I am the Sword Master. Why would I not dare to take it? The Shadow Sword Master took out his long sword and said, Since that is the case, do you dare to take 10 attacks from us? If you do not lose within 10 attacks, then we will admit that you are the Sword Master. Fighting 3 against 1, it would naturally be unfair. Therefore, the Shadow Sword Master decided to limit it to 10 attacks. With that, no one there would object to it, since it was not a battle, but a test to see if Yi Chun had the power to be the Sword Master. If he did, then it would be normal for him to not lose within 10 attacks. No need to go through all this trouble. If I cannot beat you within 10 attacks, then I will forget about the Sword Master title. Arrogant, the Fire Sword Master yelled out, as he threw out a burning sword chi attack toward Yi Chun. Broken Sword 33 movement. Illusion Sword spell. The Shattering Sword Master and the Shadow Sword Master both threw out their ace attacks as well. Sword step. Yi Chun's body was like a sword light, traveling between the interweaving sword chi. The sword light flashed once, and all of the attacks missed. They could not even touch Yi Chun's protective Zhen Yuan layer at all. First attack. Yi Chun's first target was the Shattering Sword Master, who was the closest to him. He shook his wrist, and that gentle sword wind was about to attack him. Back out. The Fire Sword Master caught up. His red longsword drew out a cross in the air. As long as Yi Chun did not back out, even if he managed to beat the Shattering Sword Master, he would still have to take one sword attack from him. Naturally, he would be at a disadvantage. 1 against 3 was not that easy. Not being at a disadvantage was even more difficult, since when the 3 of them attacked each other, there would be 3 attacks. As long as one was hit, one would be at a disadvantage. This was different from a life and death battle. There was no fairness or unfairness here. However, he had obviously underestimated Yi Chun. Taking back his longsword, Yi Chun jumped back. While he was in the air, his sword body shone with silver lightning. The lightning quickly gathered into a thunderball and shot out. Not good. The Fire Sword Master and the Shattering Sword Master backed out quickly and threw out their ace attacks toward the thunderball. Boom! A huge shockwave with electricity spread out. The Fire Sword Master and the Shattering Sword Master were both blown out backward, puking out a huge mouthful of blood. Phantom Formless Sword. Right then, the shadow-like Shadow Sword Master suddenly attacked. Dozens of invisible sword chi attacked toward Yi Chun. Boom 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 boom. Yi Chun was already prepared for the Shadow Sword Master. Within a second, he threw out dozens of sword attacks. Dozens of golden ripples spread out, destroying the Shadow Sword Master's sword chi and covering his opponent within. Pooh! The Shadow Sword Master was blown out as well. 3 sword attacks, 1 fake and 2 real. The 3 master-level swordsmen were defeated in a row. In fact, Yi Chun did not need to spend so much effort. He only needed to use his Gold Fury, and he would be able to beat the 3 easily even from a long distance. However, the 3 of them were quite far away from each other, and they were not gathered together. Using the Gold Fury would still require 3 attacks, which would be pointless. Plus, these 3 were not qualified enough for him to use his Gold Fury. Flying out for hundreds of meters, the Fire Sword Master's face was pale. He could not believe it. The 3 of them combined could not even block out 3 sword attacks from Yi Chun. If it was one-on-one, even if his personal power was doubled, he would still be killed within seconds. There would be no hope at all. I admit that you are the Sword Master, but only the 3 of us admit it. The Fire Sword Master took a deep breath and said. The Shadow Sword Master had blood on the corner of his mouth. We admit it, but it does not mean that those master-level swordsmen admit it. You have to know that the second-ranked master-level swordsman is Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master. As far as I know, there is another Sky Sword Master, who is even stronger than Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master. However, he is already over 250 years old, so he is not on the ranking. Aside from him, some of the famous master-level swordsmen have not come out for a long time, including the Demon Sword Master, the Blood Sword Master, and the Evil Sword Master. Tu Yuan from the Shattering Sword Master opened his mouth. Yi Chun, it will be hard for you to keep the title of Sword Master. Maybe those master-level swordsmen don't care about the glory of the ranking, but they have to care about the title of Sword Master. As long as one uses a sword, no one would care about it. Yi Chen said, "Since I dare to call myself the Sword Master, I have already prepared for the challenges. They don't dare to call themselves Sword Master, but I, Yi Chen, dare to. If your so-called Sky Sword Master, Demon Sword Master, or Blood Sword Master dare to challenge me, I will give them the title of Sword Master. They don't dare, but I do." Gao Changtian laughed, thinking to himself, "This time, it is Sword Master and next, it will be Blade Master. I hope Dugaju will not disappoint me. I think the leader will not blame me either. The ranking only includes warriors under 250 years old, which is really ridiculous. Either we don't create a ranking or we do. As long as one has the power, he or she will be able to make it. Unfortunately, it will not be possible for the next few competitions." Gao Changtian had not suggested that warriors over 250 years old should not be included in the ranking, since it would lose half of its meaning. A lot of people knew that there were still some powerful warriors over 250 years old. Although it would disturb their training, what would be the point of fighting? As for the body being too old to handle it, it would be a joke. Once one reached the Sea of Souls realm, they would have already left the realm of mortals. As long as they were not dead yet, their stamina would not decrease that much. Plus, they would have more experience, which would give them an advantage over the younger generation. Chapter 658. Hearing Yi Chen's words and Gao Changtian's attitude, some of the people became quiet. Indeed, the title of Sword Master needed someone to take it. If no one dared to take it, then there would never be a Sword Master. Yi Chen taking the title was not as simple as they thought. But of course, there were only a few people who could think that way. Most of the people did not agree with Yi Chen, thinking that within a couple of months, Yi Chen would become the joke of the world, and a lesson for all the young people. "Yi Chen, the battle between us is not over yet. We will fight again if fate allows it." Dugaju did not set a time limit, since it would not make any difference anymore. Since the competition between him and Yi Chen would not last for a day or two. If he could catch up to Yi Chen, then there would naturally be a battle. If he could not, then everything would just be empty talk. On the other hand, if Yi Chen did not have enough power, then the result would be the same. What he did not expect was that when he and Yi Chen battled again, it would already be many years later. As Dugaju left, more and more people started to leave. Before they left, a lot of people suddenly realized that the reason why the Nine-Dragon Lake was so crowded was because Bai Wuxia and Xiaohozuan had battled here a year ago. This year, there was also Dugaju and Yi Chen. What about next year? Let's go. Bai Wuxia and Lu Xiaoyu left right after them. "Yi Chen, we will catch up when we have time." Hai Wuya and Yan Fengfeng said goodbye to Yi Chen before leaving as well. All of a sudden, the Nine-Dragon Lake went from being crowded to being quiet. Everything had its downfall after reaching the peak. It was inevitable. Li Daoxian and the other two arrived at the hill where Yi Chen was. Li Daoxian chuckled. "Yi Chen, long time no see." Yi Chen smiled. "Indeed, long time no see. Time flies. Time flies, and looks get older. Luckily, we are all at the Sea of Souls realm. Even if we meet again in decades, nothing will change." Yi Chen smiled. Time was merciless, but it was also invincible. Only by cultivating could one preserve the most precious time, even if it was only a few short decades. Thinking back, when Yi Chen met Li Daoxian and the others in the competition of the Hidden Dragon rank, it was 8 years ago. At that time, they were still young and inexperienced, but they were still very young. 8 years had passed in a flash, and Yi Chen could not help but sigh at how fast time had passed. 8 years have passed. My appearance hasn't changed, but my heart has. No matter what, I'm still very happy to have met you, Yi Chen. Your appearance has brought us earth-shattering changes. The one who spoke was Yan Qihua. 8 years ago, he definitely wouldn't have said this, because he was young and full of vigor. He couldn't allow himself to fail. But after 8 years, his mentality had changed, and the way he viewed things had also changed. The appearance of Yi Chen didn't silence them. Instead, it made them erupt with even greater potential. Brother Yin is right. But besides your appearance, the only thing that hasn't changed is that you are still so bright. We should call you the Sword Master now. Bing Ling smiled, which was rare to see, like an ice flower blooming. Forcing a smile, Yichen asked, "You guys plan to stay in the Sky Martial region for a while?" "Indeed. We have just arrived in the Sky Martial region, and it is a bit strange. We plan to explore a bit." Li Daoxian nodded. Yichen said, "Hai Wuya Yin Feng Feng, and the rest are not bad. If you run into them, just tell them that they are my friends. As for me, I will go back to the South Ridra region first." All right. The three did not reject. Traveling outside, the more friends, the better. "Then I will go now. You guys be careful." Waving his hand, the flying puppet was thrown into the air. Yichen flipped and sat on it, turning into a beam of light and disappearing into the sky. "We are here, and he is gone." Li Daoxian sighed and looked away. For the three of them, the Sky Martial region was still very strange, and it was a new starting point. But for Yichen, there was nothing worth staying in the Sky Martial region anymore. He had everything he needed. On the way back to the South Ridra region, in the sky above the Turtle Mountain Shu, a beam of light broke through the sky, its speed extremely fast. "Yichen, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Right then, a human figure flew into the sky, blocking in front of the flying puppet. It was a man wearing gold robes and a gold crown. Who else could it be but Xia Hozuan? The flying puppet flapped its wings, turning the momentum into resistance as it slowly slowed down. On the back of the flying puppet, Yichen stood up and stared at Xia Hozuan. "If I have guessed it right, you have already trained your void-shattering finger art to completion. Otherwise, you would not dare to challenge me." The void-shattering finger was a low-rank profound sense martial art, and because it contained the space profound, it was much more powerful than normal mid-rank profound sense martial arts. Right now, Yichen had trained it to 90% completion, which was only one step away from completion. But of course this step would be the hardest as well. Without the basic understanding of the space profound, it would be very hard to make any progress. "You have guessed it right. Therefore you have to lose." Xia Hozuan's eyes shone with a gold light, looking extremely powerful. Yichen shook his head. "Before you still had a bit of hope. But now, you have no hope at all, because you do not dare to challenge me in front of everyone. That is also why you are blocking me here." What a joke. How arrogant. Xia Hozuan's expression turned cold. "All right, since you are this confident, then bring it on." Yichen put away his flying puppet and placed his hand on his sword. Shooting star finger. Xia Hozuan did not want to waste time with Yichen either, so he immediately used his best attack, shooting star finger. After half a year of closed-up training, besides his space profound, Xia Hozuan's starlight profound had also improved a lot. Right then the shooting star finger in his hand was no different from a real meteor shower. Waves of them shot out, covering the entire sky. "Break!" Taking out his thunder disaster sword, Yichen held it with both of his hands and threw out a sword attack. That powerful sword aura covered up the stars, seeming unstoppable. Rumble! A huge chunk of the shooting star shower was shattered, and that massive sword chi cut out a black path in the middle of the shower. The black path extended all the way toward Xia Hozuan. "This sword aura?" Xia Hozuan looked confused as he pointed out his finger and shattered the sword chi. "Gold pattern." Yichen flew over, his clothes fluttering in the wind like a god. He threw out another sword attack, and that aggressive gold pattern spread out at an extreme speed. Impossible! How could his sword aura be this powerful? Xia Hozuan had to throw out 3 attacks before he managed to tear apart the gold pattern. That powerful exploding power had forced him back out dozens of steps. Nothing is impossible. Right now, I have the title of Sword Master, and my mental chi has been changing slowly, forming a great power. You, on the other hand, have always been hiding like a coward. Right now, all you are relying on is your completed void-shattering finger art. Other than that, you have nothing else. After accepting the title of Sword Master, Yichen somehow felt that he had become more powerful. It was not just his outer appearance, but his inner heart. Perhaps he could not bring out his inner power directly, but it would allow Yichen's every move to have that kind of power. It would be like the sun rising and setting, the black and white alternating, and the winter coming and going. On the other hand, Xia Houzuan had been affected by Yi Chen's sword aura, so he was already at a disadvantage. Perhaps he could bring out 100% of his power, but he would not be able to break through his limit and bring out 110% of his power. In a battle between powerful warriors, even the smallest difference would be magnified. Xia Houzuan's inner heart was not powerful enough, which was why Yi Chen's power had made him lose his cool. Swordmaster title? Don't be ridiculous. Who do you think you are? Do you think anyone can get the title? In front of me, you are not even worth mentioning. Xia Houzuan roared as his whole body shone with a gold light, looking like a golden sun rising up. He looked down from above, pointing out a sharp finger at Yi Chen. Behind him, a king warrior shadow appeared. It was extremely powerful, and the whole sky seemed to have frozen. You are no longer my opponent, and you will not be in the future. Thunder Devour. Yi Chen shot into the sky, flying even higher than Xia Houzuan. His long black hair danced in the air without any wind, and that sharp sword chi surrounded his body, shattering the frozen chi field around him. He yelled with a low voice, seeming like the master of all swords. Millions of thunder and lightning gathered at the tip of the sword as he threw out a sword attack. Crack! The silver thunder ball was like a lightning punishment from the sky, leaving a crystal silver trail in the air. The end of the trail was aimed right at Xia Houzuan. Boom! Boom! Su King's finger power had been shattered, and Xia Houzuan was blown away. That king warrior shadow behind him seemed to be something that had been imprinted in the mirror. As the mirror was shattered, the king warrior shadow twisted a little before disappearing completely. Xia Houzuan had been affected by the chi flow, and he could not help but puke out a small mouthful of blood. Damn! Void-shattering finger! Xia Houzuan was extremely frustrated. He was planning to get closer to Yi Chen before performing his void-shattering finger art. But right now he could not even get close to Yi Chen. Yi Chen's sword chi was extremely powerful, and with one sword attack, even the surreal space had been shaken, making his chi and blood boil. Shoo! The gold-colored void-shattering finger power ignored the distance between them, appearing right in front of Yi Chen within a second. Under that unstoppable finger power, the sword aura that Yi Chen had created had been shattered as well. He had to admit that the void-shattering finger was indeed powerful beyond his expectation. If it were another profound sense martial art that was similar in power, Xia Houzuan would not be this powerful. Circles of gold pattern spread out. The void-shattering finger power entered the pattern, but it did not dissipate. Instead, it was extremely condensed. But the spreading nature of the pattern had increased the resistance of the void-shattering finger power. So it was dragged to the side and shot past Yi Chen's body. Spiritual sword, turning his body in the air, Yi Chen looked like a swift bird flying in the sky. He shook his wrist, and that silver mark landed on Xia Houzuan's chest. Chin! Sparks flew everywhere as Xia Houzuan was blown backward. You have dodged my void-shattering finger. But it does not matter. I already have a semi-extreme rank armor, so you will not be able to hurt me. Xia Houzuan was a bit surprised, but he soon laughed out loud. The semi-extreme rank armor he was wearing had come from a great master, and with it, his defense would increase by at least 50%. Added with the powerful defense profound sense martial art, it would be more than enough to cancel out 70 to 80% of Yi Chen's sword chi. As for the remaining 20 to 30%, it would be impressive if there was even 5% left. Gold Fury. Yi Chen's expression did not change as he threw out his longsword. That twisted gold pattern stretched out endlessly, landing on Xia Houzuan's semi-extreme rank armor again. Crack! A metal exploding sound was heard, and Xia Houzuan looked like he had swallowed a goose egg. His eyes popped out, and blood poured out from all of his orifices. Hoo! Hoo! A strong wind blew out as Xia Houzuan was blown backward, landing heavily on a 9,000 meters tall mountain, shattering half of it. Isn't this Yi Chen and Xia Houzuan? Xia Houzuan has lost so badly. Inside the Turtle Mountain, a Sea of Souls realm warrior, who was passing by, looked surprised. Haha! I am so lucky to be able to see this. A lot of people would not know that Xia Houzuan had lost to Yi Chen. Chapter 659. Yi Chen and Xia Houzuan were both famous people. No matter who lost, it would be a big news. If they sold the news to the pavilion, they would be able to get at least 1,000 top-rank spirit stones, since not every Sea of Souls realm warrior would be as rich as Yi Chen. Normally, normal Sea of Souls realm warriors would only have tens of thousands of top-rank spirit stones. If they bought some extremely expensive profound sense martial arts or top-rank weapons, then they might only have a few thousand, or even hundreds of top-rank spirit stones left. Therefore, 1,000 top-rank spirit stones was not a small amount. It was just like how even if you had hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, you would not be able to ignore 10,000. Afraid that Xia Houzuan would see him and cause him trouble, this Sea of Souls realm warrior left the Turtle Mountain without even looking back. I welcome you to challenge me anytime, if you have the determination to do so. For Yi Chen, there was no one in the young generation who could threaten him anymore. Even Bai Wuxia, who had hidden his power well, would not give Yi Chen this kind of feeling. At most, he would be able to match his opponent. If Xia Houzuan wanted to challenge him again, he would not be afraid of trouble. He was sure that it would not be him who would be able to make it, but Xia Houzuan. No one would be able to keep challenging after losing so many times. If Xia Houzuan could really do it, then Yi Chen would have to change his opinion of him. Damn! I will beat you! Xia Houzuan roared, his eyes red. Right then, he was like a completely different person compared to the Xia Houzuan who had battled with Bai Wuxia. Yi Chen shook his head and turned to leave. When everything was going well, everyone would feel proud and confident. But when things went bad, only a small portion of people would be able to stay true to themselves. In his previous life, Yi Chen had seen a lot of entrepreneurs jumping off buildings because of bankruptcy. Those people had been on TV when they were so famous, so enviable. But once the gap was too big, they would be even worse than normal people. Therefore, the biggest opponent would not be anyone else but oneself. Even if it were Yi Chen, he would not dare to say that he would be able to look normal and stay true to himself when things went bad. All he could do was to improve his mental state and continue to improve himself. The flying puppet flew for days and nights, passing through the mountain region and arriving at the South Ridra region. The South Ridra region had 4 big countries and 10 mid-sized countries. When passing by the mid-tier country, the White Mystery Country, Yi Chen's expression changed. He commanded the flying puppet to descend at the speed of light. Sect War. As he descended, Yi Chen saw hundreds of people fighting in the mountains below. These people wore 4 different types of clothing. One had a large centipede embroidered on the back. One had a small snake embroidered on the sleeves. One had a small sword embroidered on the arm. And one had a flame pattern on the chest. If Yi Chen's guess was correct, the large centipede embroidered on the robe should be the 8th rank sect, the Black Nightmare sect. The small snake embroidered on the robe should be the 8th rank sect, the Green Serpent Valley. The small sword should be the 7th rank sect, the Flying Sword sect, and the flame pattern should be the Fire Cloud sect. Of the 4 major sects, Black Centipede Gate and Flying Sword sect were on the same side, while Green Serpent Valley and Fire Cloud sect were on the same side. The 2 groups fought crazily, and there were people dying from time to time. This was Yi Chen's first time witnessing an official sect war, and he was quite interested. Spirit vein? Shifting his gaze, Yi Chen finally understood why the 4 major sects were fighting. It turned out that the essence chi in the air above the mountains was very dense. Somewhere in the mountains, there was a huge mine. The essence chi outside the mine even formed an essence chi whirlpool. The essence chi whirlpool was nearly 100 meters wide, and it seemed to be suppressed by an invisible force, causing the essence chi that had accumulated for countless years to not leak out. So it's a top-notch low-grade spirit vein. Apart from the 4 grades of spirit vein, there were also 4 grades for each grade. Among the low-grade spirit veins, the lowest was the normal low-grade spirit vein, followed by the medium low-grade spirit vein, followed by the superior low-grade spirit vein, and the best was naturally the peak low-grade spirit vein. A normal low-grade spirit vein was enough to support the expenses of a grade 8 or grade 9 sect for 10 years. A medium low-grade spirit vein could support a grade 8 or grade 9 sect for 20 years, and a superior low-grade spirit vein could easily cause a war between two grade 7 sects. As for the superior low-grade spirit vein, once it appeared, there would be a situation like the following, where several sects would fight for it, even if they would suffer heavy losses. In the past 50 years, the best that the Sky Cloud Martial School had ever found was a mid-level low-grade spirit vein, and the Yi family had also found a normal low-grade spirit vein. The spirit fountain was way too important for a martial institution. It could be said that it was the foundation of a martial institution. Not everyone in the martial institution would be like Yi Chun, traveling alone, killing enemies and taking their wealth. Then, he would go in and explore the ruins and gain a lot. But if he was unlucky, he might be killed by the enemies, or he might not find any opportunities at all. So he would have to live a hard life. Therefore, a martial school could not be supported by one person. Most of the martial schools wanted to develop, they needed a spirit vein. Only with a spirit vein could they have enough spirit stones. And with spirit stones, they could pay salaries. In the Flowing Cloud sect, an outer elder would need hundreds of low-grade spirit stones a month, and an inner elder would need thousands of low-grade spirit stones, and dozens of medium-grade spirit stones a month. Adding some attendants, core disciples, inner disciples and outer disciples, they would need at least hundreds of thousands of low-grade spirit stones a month, which would be around 1 or 2 million a year. Yi Chun had given the Flowing Cloud sect millions of low-grade spirit stones, but it could only last them for a few years. According to Yi Chun's knowledge, a grade 7 martial school could not survive without 5 million low-grade spirit stones, and 200,000 medium-grade spirit stones a year. A top grade 7 martial school would need 7 or 8 million spirit stones a year, and a grade 6 martial school would need even more. Without 30 or 40 million low-grade spirit stones, and millions of medium-grade spirit stones a year, they would need nothing. If they could not even give out normal spirit stones, then who would want to join the martial school? Being rich was the symbol of a powerful martial school. They could not let everyone go out to earn spirit stones, could they? The high-grade low-grade spirit veins would produce about 1% of the total mid-grade spirit stones, while the top low-grade spirit veins would produce 5%. Therefore, it was not strange for 2 top grade 7 martial schools and 2 top grade 8 martial schools to fight for a top low-grade spirit vein. In the mountains, beautiful light waves shone everywhere. From time to time, people would be blown into pieces and killed on the spot. That kind of brutal scene was very spectacular and shocking. The battles between rank 7 and 8 martial schools are already this brutal. The battles between rank 5 martial schools would be 10 times more brutal. A rank 5 martial institution was different from a rank 7 or 8 martial institution. The main fighting force was made up of astral-reaching realm warriors. Hundreds, or even thousands of astral-reaching realm warriors were battling against each other. Even Sea of Souls realm warriors would have to back off, because one wrong move could lead to instant death. Seeing this battle, Yi Chun could not help but worry about the Dragon God Celestial Palace. Its opponents were the top 4 rank 5 martial schools. Even if they were individually weaker than the Dragon God Celestial Palace, once they combined, their overall power would be more powerful than the Dragon God Celestial Palace. Last time, the leader of the White Dragon Palace, Missouri Feng, and Long Bai had told him that the Dragon God Celestial Palace had lost 300 astral-reaching realm warriors and 20 Sea of Souls realm warriors. Yi Chun decided that once the Dragon God Celestial Palace was in danger, he would definitely go and help. Although one's personal power would not make a difference in the battle between rank 5 martial schools, helping and not helping were 2 different concepts. Helping in a time of need would be much more valuable than adding flowers to a brocade. If it were someone else, they would probably try to take the spirit fountain. The top low-rank spirit fountain was not something that Yi Chun wanted, because he did not need low-rank spirit stones or mid-rank spirit stones. But if there was a martial school behind him, then it would be different. Fortunately, Yi Chun would not do such a thing. His sword art was righteous. If the martial school lacked spirit stones, he could help find them, and would not try to take other people's harvest. Quietly, Yi Chun rode his flying puppet and left the area. Finally left. Yi Chen did not hide his tracks, so the astral-reaching realm warriors below had basically seen Yi Chen. They were afraid that Yi Chen would ignore his identity and take the spirit fountain for himself. If he really did that, then they would have no choice but to hand it over. Fortunately, it did not happen. Kill. As soon as Yi Chen left, these astral-reaching realm warriors let loose and started to fight against the astral-reaching realm warriors. Blood rained everywhere. After leaving the White Mystery Nation, Yi Chen specially went to the Morong family. Morong Qingqing was still in closed-up training. She had been wounded too badly last time. Forcefully using her demon power essence had almost shattered her demon power ocean, which would not be healed in a short period of time. After staying in the Morong family for a day, Yi Chen returned to the Yi family in the Misty Mountain. Once there, Yi Chen learned that the leader of the White Dragon Palace, Missouri Feng, had already left the South Rudra Martial School. The situation in the East Shallow Ocean was not looking good for the Dragon God Celestial Palace. If it reached a certain point, they might have to call back most of the people they had set up in the True Spirit Continent. Yi Chen had told Long Bai that if she needed him, he could go over any time. On this day, Yi Chen started to train the defensive sword spell. Training the defensive sword spell required a top-rank great sword in addition to soul power, because only top-rank great swords could be imprinted with the soul mark. Although mid-rank great swords could be used as well, their control would not be as good as top-rank great swords, which would reduce their power. The defensive sword spell was divided into 3 levels. The first level was the most basic defensive sword spell, which allowed the user to control the flying sword and kill the enemies from a distance. The more powerful the soul power, the further the distance. The second level allowed the user to control the sword as if it was his own arm. Within 100 steps, he could kill the enemies with just a thought. Moreover, the flying speed was even faster than the first level. The third level was where the true profoundness of the defensive sword spell lay. It allowed the user to split Zhen Yuan into flying swords. Once trained to the highest level, the user would be able to kill the enemies with 100 swords. Beside the lake in the inner courtyard. Go! With a sword finger on his right hand, the emerald long sword on Yi Chen's waist flew out of its scabbard automatically. Like a beam of emerald light, it instantly pierced through the fake mountain hundreds of steps away. Its speed was even more impressive than the spiritual sword. Of course, it was not because the defensive sword spell was powerful to this extent. What truly made the defensive sword spell powerful was Yi Chen's soul power. His soul power was 5 times that of normal people. Controlling the flying sword to kill the enemies was as easy as eating or drinking. It was only the first level, but he could already kill the enemies with just a thought. Chapter 660. It was only a straight line attack. But Yi Chen was still not satisfied. He pushed his soul power, and his sword finger drew an arc in the air before pulling back. Shoo! The emerald light was the same as Yi Chen's sword finger. After drawing an arc in the air, it pierced through the fake mountain for the second time. Its speed was so fast that it was only a little bit slower than a straight line attack. Then, Yi Chen's sword finger kept on moving. The emerald light pierced through the fake mountain from different angles. No one knew how many times it had pierced through. Eventually, the fake mountain that looked like a hornet's nest could not handle the huge weight anymore, and collapsed immediately. Come back! Yi Chen pulled his sword finger back, and the emerald light turned into a sword, which was put back into the scabbard. My soul power is 5 times more powerful than normal people. I have only trained the defensive sword spell to the first level, and I have already reached the second level. Plus, my flying speed is even faster than Situhao's second level, and my attacking power is even more powerful. I can basically control it like my own arm. If Situhao saw Yi Chen controlling the flying sword, he would definitely be shocked. If the first level was already better than his second level, then wouldn't the second level be even better? However, the first level is still the first level after all. Controlling the flying sword is still a bit stiff, and the turning is not natural enough. If I encounter a top warrior, I would be easily found out. After thinking about it, Yi Chen decided not to train the second level for now. His soul power was very powerful, and there was still room for improvement in the first level. When he reached the point where he could no longer make any progress, then he would train the second level of the defensive sword spell. The effect should be much better then. A couple of days had passed, and Yi Chen was improving every day. He had to admit that the defensive sword spell seemed to have been created just for him. With his powerful soul power, training the defensive sword spell was just a little bit harder than eating or drinking. Of course, this was only the first level, and the second level would probably not be this easy. On this day, 4 young girls came to the Yi family. The girl on the left was about 25 or 26 years old. She was wearing a green dress and had a long sword on her waist. She looked very pretty, and her eyes were like cold stars. Looking closely, she even looked a bit similar to Yi Chen. Normally, people who looked a bit similar should be related by blood. The girl in green was none other than Yi Chen's 4th uncle's daughter, Yi Xian. Yi Chen's father, Yi Tianhao, and his 4th uncle Yi Wenhao already looked 50 to 60% similar. Therefore, their names were only one word apart. As the 4th uncle's daughter, it was not strange for Yi Xian to look a bit similar to Yi Chen. Yi Xian had reached the astral reaching realm last year, and was the 4th person in the Yi family to reach the astral reaching realm. The first one was Yi Chen, and the second and third were his parents. Before Yi Chen's rise, Yi Xian was the #1 martial genius of the Yi family, so it was natural for her to have this achievement. The 3 young women walking next to Yi Xian were all around 25 years old. The first one on the right was a woman in red. She had a beautiful face and a sexy body. There was a black whip wrapped around her waist, and when she walked, her body swayed in the wind, which was quite eye-catching. The second one on Yi Xian's right was not as pretty as Yi Xian and the girl in red, but she looked extra pretty. Her eyebrows were curved, and her eyes were watery. The first impression that she gave people was that she wanted to protect her, and not let her suffer even a little bit, as if it would be a huge sin to let her suffer. The third one was not any weaker than Yi Xian in terms of appearance. She looked a bit cold, but there was also a bit of arrogance in that coldness. She was the tallest one among the 4, and had a thin willow sword on her waist. The scabbard was decorated with tiny gemstones, which looked very bright. The first 3 were all at the early astral reaching realm, while the cold-looking girl was at the mid-astral reaching realm. "Ah, I wonder if I can see your cousin this time. I have been here a couple of times already, and as long as I can see him, I will be satisfied." The red-clothed woman was filled with anticipation, but there was a trace of nervousness in her expression. She was like a shy girl who was about to see her sweetheart. If someone who was familiar with the red-clothed girl saw her like this, they would definitely be dumbfounded. This was because in the eyes of outsiders, the red-clothed girl had always been spoiled and unreasonable by nature. Yi Xian shook her head helplessly. These 3 were all her good friends, and they all had special backgrounds. The girl in red was called Di Hongyin, and she was the princess of the Red Moon Nation, a mid-ranked country in the South Ridra region. Her status was even higher than the head disciple of a rank 7 martial institution. The pretty-looking girl was Lan Suitsue, a young lady from a rank 7 family in the Sky Serpent Nation, who also had a high status. The one with the highest status was the cold-looking girl, Luo Baishuang. She was a top disciple from the rank 6 martial institution, the Sunset Martial School, and her cultivation was one small realm higher than theirs. Among the 3, she had met Lan Suitsue first, and the friendship between the 2 was very pure. As for Di Hongyin and Luo Baishuang, it was only because of Yi Chen that they started to get to know each other. But as time went on, after going through a couple of life and death situations together, this impure friendship started to become pure as well. Otherwise, Yi Xian would not spend so much time with them and bring them to the Yi family as guests. But of course, friendship aside, when the 3 were with Yi Xian, they still talked about Yi Chen a lot. "My cousin always goes to the Sky Martial region, and every time he goes, it would be for a long time. Even I have only seen him a couple of times." Yi Xian was not at home all the time, so she rarely saw Yi Chen. The Sky Martial region is a holy place for all the martial geniuses. Normal martial geniuses would not even have the right to go there. But your cousin is even more powerful. He is the #1 warrior, just below the top 5 young warriors. He is the only young warrior in the master-level warrior ranking besides the top 5 young warriors. Di Hongyin could not help but think about it. If she knew that Yi Chen had already beaten Lu Xiaoyu, and Xia Hozuan had indirectly beaten Xiao Chuha, she would probably go crazy. Lan Suitsue blushed and said in a small voice, Yi Xian, can you take us to your cousin's yard for a look? No. Yi Xian rejected right away. In the Yi family, which one of them did not see Yi Chen as a legend, she was both respectful and scared of Yi Chen, so she would not dare to bring anyone into Yi Chen's yard. But I can take you to the Wind Pavilion. You can see my cousin's yard from there. Yi Xian said again. All right, take us there now. Di Hongyin said eagerly. The Wind Pavilion was one of the tallest buildings in the Yi family. It could look over half of the entire Yi family. Yi Chen's yard was the biggest in the Yi family. It was covered in green trees, blocking most of the buildings and bedrooms. However, the lake and the open space next to it were not blocked at all. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps were heard as Yi Xian and the other 3 arrived at the 9th floor of the pavilion. That is my cousin's yard. Yi Xian walked to the wide window and pointed at Yi Chen's yard. Strangely, the 4 suddenly quieted down, not even daring to breathe. In Chen Shi's field of vision, a blue-clothed young man was cultivating a unique sword technique at the side of the lake. With the point of his sword, an emerald green ray of light shot out, and it fluttered and circled in the sky above the lake, before drawing out a myriad of strands of light that were extremely beautiful and swift. This young man looked even younger than them, just in his early 20s. But everyone who had seen his picture would know that this was Yi Chen. He was 26 years old this year. And the reason why he looked so young was because he had reached the astral reaching realm when he was 19 and reached the seas of Soul's realm when he was 24. His appearance had been stagnant for many years, as if time could not do anything to him. Your cousin is at home. Di Hongyin covered her mouth while Lan Suitsue and Luo Baishuang's breathing increased. Yeah. Yi Xian nodded dumbly. To be honest, Yi Xian and Yi Chen did not have much contact with each other, since they were always out. It would be luck if they could run into each other in the Yi family, and it would only happen 2 or 3 times a year. Looking at Yi Chen from afar, Yi Xian did not know what she was feeling. Before Yi Chen's rise, her attitude towards Yi Chen was very cold. Although she was not as hostile towards him as Yi Tang and Yi Ming, she would not be too close to him either. Moreover, because of Ji Shuiyan, her relationship with Yi Chen was very tense. Back then, she did not care, because she was the #1 martial genius of the Yi family, and she was not on the same path as Yi Chen. However, since then, Yi Chen had started to rise. During the family gathering, Yi Chen shocked everyone and won the first place. At the banquet of the head disciple, young Master Emerald, he showed his brilliance and defeated the stone man Sherpatian. Then in the Heaven Dream Ancient Place, he shocked the whole world and became the #1 martial genius of the 9 nations, beating down the head disciple, young Master Emerald, young Master North Snow from the North Snow Martial Academy, and the other martial geniuses. All of a sudden, Yi Chen became the king, and no one dared to compete with him. If this was already shocking enough, then the next one would be a legend. In the Hidden Dragon rank competition that was held once every 3 years, Yi Chen had become a shining star. This star was even brighter than the sun, as he had beaten all the top martial geniuses that Yi Xian could not even imagine. He had stepped on their dead bodies and reached the top, becoming the #1 martial genius of the South Ridra region. Just when everyone thought that Yi Chen would stop there, he had become one of the top young warriors in the South Ridra region, just like Li Xiaoyan, Jing Aoshuan, and Chu Zhongtian. It was not over yet. In the new tea gathering, Yi Chen had finally won the first place, and had beaten the uninvited guest from the East region with his own power. Since then, Yi Chen had become known by everyone in the South Ridra region. He had become the leader of the martial geniuses, the legend of the whole South Ridra region. It was as if he would not give up until he scared people to death. What had happened before seemed to be just small fights for Yi Chen, and the stage was not big enough for him. He had come to the Sky Martial region, as the #1 warrior of the young generation in the South Ridra region, starting a new journey and beginning a glorious life. In just a couple of years, he had become the #1 warrior, just below the top 5 young warriors. He had become one of the most famous martial geniuses of the whole True Spirit continent. His fame could no longer be described by one region or one country, but by the whole continent, dozens of regions and countless countries. Right then, Yi Chen was no longer a legend but a myth. As a member of the Yi family, Yi Xian knew better than anyone else that everyone in the South Ridra region would want to get on Yi Chen's good side. Those rank 6 martial institutions were unbelievably powerful in the eyes of normal people. But a lot of people knew that as long as Yi Chen wanted to, he could destroy all of them in one night. Everyone in the South Ridra region was looking up at Yi Chen. He was not only the #1 warrior of the young generation, but also the king of the whole South Ridra region. Once the king was angry, everyone would tremble, including the top 4 countries, top 10 mid-sized countries, 36 small countries, and countless martial institutions. Because of Yi Chen, the Yi family and the Sky Cloud Martial School had a very high status in the whole South Ridra region. A lot of royal families hoped that their children could enter the Sky Cloud Martial School and become their disciples. Some of them even wanted their daughters to marry into the Yi family, even if it was a son of a concubine. If they could marry a direct descendant of the Yi family, it would be a blessing that they had cultivated for 8 lifetimes. Once they had a good relationship with the Yi family, all of the powerful forces in the whole South Ridra region would give them some face. Although the Yi family did not want to get involved with so many powerful forces, there would always be 1 or 2 exceptions. For example, there was a princess from a mid-sized country who married into the Yi family, and the little princess of the Windy Nation was also engaged to a direct descendant of the Yi family. The appearance of Yi Chen had saved thousands of years of hard work for the Yi family. Even the older generation had to respect and fear Yi Chen at the same time. It was a change brought about by power. Even if they were related by blood, it would still be useless. Within the Yi family, only the leader of the family, Yi Tianhao, had the closest relationship with Yi Chen, so it would not be affected too much. Yi Xian, can you introduce me to your cousin? The cold and arrogant Luo Baishuang suddenly said. Yi Xian came back to her senses and shook her head. Don't even think about it. My cousin already has a girlfriend, and you all know her. It is Morong Qingcheng. Then, I can be his concubine. Di Hongyin was not willing to accept it. Right then, Yi Chen pointed out his finger, and his long sword returned to its scabbard. He turned his head and looked at the 9th floor of the Wind Pavilion. All of a sudden, all 4 of them stopped breathing. Chapter 661. If it were only a normal Sea of Souls realm warrior looking at them, they would not have stopped breathing, unless the warrior had done it on purpose. But Yi Chen had only casually glanced at them, and his expression was not cold at all. It was just like a senior looking at a junior. But the pressure of a senior was way too powerful. It was just a normal glance, but it had already numbed their bodies. If Yi Chen had done it on purpose, they might have been scared out of their wits. Yi Chen naturally did not do it on purpose. He had just finished training his defensive sword spell, so a wave of sword intent was still lingering. Even if it was just a strand of it, it was enough to make the 4 feel uncomfortable. After all, no one in the world could have such a powerful sword intent at the Sea of Souls realm. Plus, Yi Chen had accepted the title of Sword Master, so he had a kind of prestige that could not be violated. Yi Xian, is this your friend? Yi Chen had let go of some of his unhappiness a long time ago. Back then, Yi Xian was only a 14 or 15-year-old girl, and did not have any schemes. Not to mention Yi Xian, even his uncle Yi Batian had been forgotten by Yi Chen. As a sword master, one should not be calculative, but one should also be decisive in killing. One should know who was the enemy, and who was not. As Yi Xian's cousin, if he did not care about them after noticing them, it would only hurt Yi Xian's feelings. Therefore, Yi Chen decided to ask about them. Indeed, a joyful expression flashed through Yi Xian's face as she nodded. Yes, cousin Yi Chen. Come here. Hearing him, the 4 jumped down from the Wind Pavilion and carefully arrived at Yi Chen's yard. Right then, even Di Hongyin, who was usually aggressive, seemed very cautious as well. Her small hands were holding onto the corner of her clothes. Luo Baishuang and Lan Suetsue's eyes were full of nervousness. "Don't be nervous. I am about the same age as you guys." Yi Chen chuckled as the remaining sword intent disappeared completely. "Of course I am nervous," Di Hongyin mumbled to herself. Lan Suetsue asked carefully, "Brother Yi, what kind of sword spell did you just train? Can your sword fly out?" She didn't know how to address Yi Chen. Fortunately, she was 1 year younger than Yi Chen, so she just called him Big Brother Yi. Yi Chen said, "This is the Imperial Sword Technique. It requires soul power to control." Sword control technique? Yi Xian and the other three looked confused. They were unfamiliar with this sword art and had never heard of it before. Flying on a sword, taking a person's head from 1,000 miles away. You can understand it this way. After mastering the Imperial Sword Technique, Yi Chen could already fly on his sword. Due to his powerful soul force, the speed of his flying sword was even faster than the sword light flight technique. This was because the speed of the flying sword was faster than most attacks, which was something that the sword light flight technique could not achieve at the moment. Hearing Yi Chen's words, the eyes of the four brightened, and an image naturally appeared in their minds. A peerless swordsman was riding on a flying sword, flying elegantly and fiercely. Without a doubt, the image of this swordsman was Yi Chen. It is very rare for you to be able to reach the astral reaching realm at such a young age. If your willpower is strong enough, it would not be impossible for you to reach the Sea of Souls realm. Yi Chen did not use the standard of the Sky Martial region to treat the four, since those who could appear in the Sky Martial region were all insane martial geniuses. There might not even be 1 in 100 million, but in the South Ridra region, the four of them were already considered top martial geniuses, and it was not impossible for them to reach the Sea of Souls realm. Willpower. Doesn't it need talent? Luo Baishuang asked. Yi Chen shook his head. Talent can help you reach the astral reaching realm, but reaching the Sea of Souls realm will be extremely difficult. When you fail to make any progress for countless times, you will start to waver and lose your confidence. Then, you will be satisfied with your current cultivation and lose your ambition. Not having talent is not scary, but having your confidence shaken and having no ambition is the scariest thing. When your willpower is strong enough, then even if your talent is a bit weaker, it will still be okay, because once you reach the astral reaching realm, everyone will be on the same starting line. People with a strong willpower will have a much higher chance of success than geniuses with less confidence. The talent that Yi Chen mentioned was relative to their level. If it were those martial geniuses in the Sky Martial region, it would indeed be insane. Even if they did not have enough willpower, they would still be able to reach the Sea of Souls realm. But whether it was the Sea of Souls realm or the astral reaching realm, one would still need the willpower in the end. Hearing him, Yi Xian and the other three seemed to be thinking about something. Besides Yi Xian, who knew a lot about Yi Chen in the beginning, Luo Baishuang and the other two had all heard about how Yi Chen was not that amazing at the beginning. Since he was able to achieve so much, he must have an unimaginable willpower. If Yi Chen were just an astral-reaching realm warrior like them, then they would not think that way. But in their eyes, Yi Chen was a legend. Whatever he said, it would not be wrong. After that, Yi Chen taught them a little bit. Yi Xian and Luo Baishuang trained sword arts, so they did not know much about the last few top-rank Earth Realm sword arts. But after Yi Chen's teaching, they were suddenly enlightened. On the other hand, Di Hongyin and Lan Suetsue trained a whip art and a palm art respectively. Yi Chen also taught them a little bit, and they learned no less than Yi Xian and Luo Baishuang. It should not be forgotten that Yi Chen was unrivaled in terms of martial arts training. Although he mainly trained sword arts, any martial arts he learned would be easy to master. Plus, top-rank Earth Realm martial arts were not as powerful as profound sense martial arts after all, which were way easier. As the days passed by, Yi Chen had soon trained to the peak of the first level of the defensive sword spell. Within 100 steps, he could cut off dozens of flies' wings with a single thought. On the other hand, Luo Baishuang and the other two rarely got to see Yi Chen in person, so they refused to leave the Yi family. Yi Xian could not get rid of them no matter how hard she tried. Of course, they did not dare to disturb Yi Chen too much. Every 3 to 4 days, they would only ask to see Yi Chen, with the excuse of learning martial arts. To them, Yi Chen was already an extravagant hope, so it should not be a problem for them to see him. Just like that, a month had passed, and it was already late October. Yi Chen left the Yi family and flew towards the Morong family. Seeing that Yi Chen had left, Luo Baishuang and the other two finally felt too embarrassed to stay any longer, so they left together. The Yi family was not far from the Morong family, but it was still a few million miles away. On the way, Yi Chen passed by a big city in the Black Dragon Empire, the Black Line City. With a thought, Yi Chen directed his flying puppet to fly down. Inside the pavilion, there were a lot of warriors lining up in front of the gate. The second master-level warrior ranking had been released a week ago, and every day, there would be a huge amount of people coming to buy it. The first day had the most people, and then the following days, the number would decrease. It had only been a week, but if one wanted to buy the ranking, they would still have to line up. One had to admit that the ranking had already become a symbol of the whole True Spirit continent. If one had not seen the ranking before, they would be too embarrassed to talk to others, since it would be very easy to be looked down upon. This year, there are indeed a lot of young warriors in the ranking. Shengguan Fei, Helian Wuhua, Situ Hao, Yan Fengfeng, Bai Minghui, Xiao Chuha Lu Xiaoyu, Xia Hozuan, Dugaju by Wuxia. So many. What? Yi Chen is ranked number 1, and his title is Sword Master. Yi Chen Sword Master? Some of the people who had not bought it yet heard people mumbling. Their eyes widened as they dug their ears, thinking that they might be hearing things. Are you sure? Someone asked hurriedly. Of course I am. The number 1 is indeed Yi Chen, and his title is Sword Master. The person who was talking said with a bit of shock, Boss, give me a copy. All of a sudden, the area around the pavilion was heated up. Sword Master Yi Chen, the number 1 on the ranking. This news was just too shocking. Those who had not bought it yet were extremely anxious, wishing that they could go and grab one for themselves. Alright, don't worry, everyone will get one. The owner of the pavilion was so busy that his forehead was covered in sweat. After queuing for a while, Yi Chen also managed to buy a master-level warrior ranking book. Before he left, someone noticed him, and was immediately dumbfounded. However, when he came back to his senses, Yi Chen had already left. I think I just saw Yi Chen. High up in the sky, Yi Chen sat on his flying puppet. Flipping to the first page, Yi Chen saw his own name. Number 1 on the ranking, Sword Master Yi Chen. This person is a rare sword art martial genius. At the age of 26, he made it to the top of the ranking, and his title is Sword Master. On September 18th, he beat Lu Xiaoyu and Dugaju, and on September 25th he beat Xia Hozuan in the Turtle Mountain. After the evaluation of dozens of our elders, he has been ranked as the number 1 on the ranking, and his title is Sword Master. This title is still to be decided, but we all think that the title will definitely belong to him. The pavilion had a very high evaluation for Yi Chen, and their tone was very certain. He actually called me Sword Master? Yi Chen was a bit surprised. Gao Changtian calling him Sword Master was just giving him a title, which was different from the pavilion calling him Sword Master. At least, the latter would be more powerful than the former. So whether or not the leader of the pavilion was involved would be a mystery. Without paying too much attention to it, Yi Chen continued to flip to the back. There were indeed a lot of young warriors in the ranking this time. There were 17 of them, which was close to 1/4 of the ranking. It was quite a high ratio. Among them, Dugaju was ranked 4th, the Axe Master was 2nd, Su Yuan was 3rd, Xie Baiting was 6th, and Bai Wuxia was still the 7th. The title of Sword Master has landed on me just like that. It seems like I will have to work hard. Closing the book, Yi Chen smiled lightly. This is ridiculous. What is wrong with the pavilion? They put our headmaster in 2nd place. What right does that Yi Chen have to be at the top? In the surreal martial school, a lot of the disciples were very upset, and some of the elders looked angry as well. Inside the headmaster's palace, the axe master Lin Rahai closed his book. Swordmaster. I am afraid it will not be for long. Those old guys are not easy to deal with. They don't care about the ranking, but the title of Swordmaster is something they have to care about. As the headmaster of the Surreal Martial School, it is not appropriate for me to make a move, but it is not necessary for me to make a move either. In the middle of a mountain of swords, a white-haired elder slowly spat out a mouthful of white mist. The mist was like a blade, flashing across the sky like a piece of white silk. Crack! A mountain that was as straight as a sword had been cut in half, and the cut was as smooth as a mirror. It seems like after a long time, the martial world no longer cares about us. They even gave us the title of Sword Master so easily. The white-haired elder had a calm look in his eyes. Every move he made, the plants around him would shake, as if they were sharp swords. If any sword artist came here, they would definitely be terrified. Chapter 662. As soon as the second ranking was released, the whole True Spirit continent was shocked. No one had expected Yi Chen to be ranked first, since the former first and second rankers, Axe Master Lin Rahai and Earth Sword Master Su Yuan, were not to be trifled with. For a young man who was not even 30 years old to push them down, it would be too exaggerated. If being ranked first in the ranking was exaggerated, then the title of Sword Master would be ridiculous. If it were just saying that Yi Chen was the Sword Master, it would still be acceptable. However, an organization as big as the Knowledge Pavilion had unanimously agreed that Yi Chen was the Sword Master. If this was not ridiculous, then what was? Therefore, a lot of people started to doubt the accuracy of the Knowledge Pavilion. As for whether they were right or not, it would be revealed soon. Those famous sword artists of their eras would not be indifferent to the title of Sword Master. The challenge that Yi Chen would have to face would be very serious. When Yi Chen arrived at the Morong family, Morong Qingqing had just come out of seclusion for a couple of days. Her wounds had already been healed. Although she had to train for half a year to recover, it was not without its benefits. Because her body had been wounded by the demonic power essence, it had strengthened her demonic body to the third step. In terms of physical defense, it was even more powerful than Yi Chen's third step spirit body. In addition, Morong Qingqing had also refined a huge amount of demonic power essence, allowing her cultivation to skyrocket. She had successfully broken through to Late Sea of Soul Realm, which was one step ahead of Yi Chen. However, this breakthrough had also depleted the demonic power essence inside her body. She was afraid that she would only be able to reach half-step King Warrior level at most. Once that happened, she would have to rely on herself. The demonic power in the True Spirit continent was extremely rare, and it would be several times more difficult for her to reach life and death realm. With her demonic body reaching the third step, and her cultivation reaching Late Sea of Soul Realm, Morong Qingqing's power had increased by several folds. Before, using the Sky Demon Finger would be a huge burden, but now, she could use it dozens of times in a row without any problem. Moreover, during her breakthrough to Late Sea of Soul Realm, Morong Qingqing had experienced the state of being one with the world for a short period of time. Her few profound sense martial arts had all reached 80% completion, and her dark sky curtain had also reached completion, increasing its defensive power. She had already started to think about creating her own profound sense martial art. This was a black ocean that stretched as far as the eye could see. The waves surged. The sea was dotted with islands. Basically, there would be an island every few hundred or thousand kilometers. Looking down from above, one could see that the Black Sea was densely packed with islands. It was dozens of times denser than the surrounding seas. There were even people mining resources on some of the islands. The miners on the southern island had a simple dragon pattern embroidered on their clothes. It was only a few strokes, but it gave off a majestic aura. However, the miners on the northern island did not have the same pattern embroidered on their clothes. Some had a black octopus, some had a gale pattern, some had a whirlpool pattern, and some had a giant eagle pattern. Their cultivation was not high, and they were basically all at the condensing reality realm. Shio 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 shio. From the south, densely packed figures shot over. As they got closer and closer, they could see that they were all wearing azure robes with a huge dragon pattern embroidered on them. The people living in this area knew very well that these people were the people of Dragon God's Celestial Palace's Azure Dragon Hall. Azure Dragon Hall was the head of the 5 great halls, and its overall strength was the highest. Stop! The leader was tall and sturdy, with tiger-like eyes and thick eyebrows. He carried a huge blade on his back, the hilt of which was as long as an arm. He was the deputy leader of the Azure Dragon Hall, Wuxia. His cultivation base was at the peak of Late Sea of Soul Realm, and his strength was not much weaker than the leader of the Yellow Dragon Hall, Zhang Zhenguang. This time, he had led hundreds of people here, because he had received a message. The enemy force Whirlwind Gate would be escorting a batch of resources through this area. What they needed to do was to kill the enemy and seize the resources. Everyone spread out and prepare for the ambush. Wait for my command and attack. Don't let a single one escape. Wuxia said loudly. Yes. Among these hundreds of people, there were more than 30 Sea of Souls Realm warriors. Among them, 15 were at Early Sea of Souls Realm, 10 were at Mid Sea of Souls Realm, and 7 were at Late Sea of Souls Realm. The rest were all astral-reaching realm warriors. With such a powerful force, it would be enough to wipe out all of the rank 6 martial institutions in the whole South River region. Deputy Hu, will there be any danger? A gloomy middle-aged man walked out from Wuxia's side. This person was the former deputy of Yellow Dragon Hall, Yao Yifeng. After Yao Yifeng was captured by Zhang Zhenguang, he was sent to Dragon God's Celestial Palace. Since Dragon King was already in seclusion at that time, and the 4 great powers were getting restless, the upper echelons of Dragon God's Celestial Palace allowed Yao Yifeng to atone for his crimes with meritorious service, and sent him to Blood Battle Ocean to temporarily join Azure Dragon Hall. Of course, the upper echelons of Dragon God's Celestial Palace were also afraid that Yao Yifeng would harbor resentment and do something bad to the palace. Therefore, although they removed the yellow dragon sealing great art from his body, they also added another restriction. This restriction wouldn't affect his strength, but could control him. As long as he dared to rebel, the restriction would activate, and he would immediately die without a burial. After joining Azure Dragon Hall, Yao Yifeng didn't make any abnormal movements. He fought a few bloody battles and killed many enemies, which made the upper echelons of Dragon God's Celestial Palace feel relieved. Originally, he was only a combat attendant of Azure Dragon Hall, but now, he was promoted to a chief attendant. Once Dragon God's Celestial Palace completely trusted him, it wouldn't be impossible for him to be promoted to a deputy. Wuxia waved his hand. This operation is extremely secretive. Less than 5 people know about it in advance. So don't worry. It's absolutely safe. Only the hall master and a few deputies knew about this kind of top-secret operation. Even chief attendants didn't have the qualifications to know. It's best if it's absolutely safe. Our Dragon God Celestial Palace's losses have been too disastrous. A cold light flickered in Yao Yifeng's eyes as he sighed. They'll pay a disastrous price. Wuxia's expression was fierce. The ambush was quickly carried out. In a short while, not a single Azure Dragon Hall member could be seen. Gales blew past, and the seawater surged violently. Time passed slowly. After an unknown amount of time, the Azure Dragon Hall members hiding in the seawater or on the islands gradually became anxious. Why aren't they here yet? Could it be that they've found out? Don't jinx it. Sweat, I'm just saying. Don't take it seriously. Another short while passed, suddenly screams resounded. Not good, we've been counter-ambushed. In the sky and in the sea, densely packed figures surrounded them. At a glance, the number of people on each side was not much less than theirs. Added together, it was more than 3 times their number. Once they were surrounded, it was very likely that none of them would be able to escape. Impossible. How did they know? Wuxia turned pale with fright. Since they couldn't easily release their soul power during the ambush, it would be tantamount to telling others that they were lying in ambush. Therefore, the enemies were only seen dozens of li away. Almost subconsciously, Wuxia activated his soul power and spread it out. Within his soul power perception, there were enemies in every direction. There were Whirlwind Gate, Black King Gate, Sky Eagle Cult and Water Wave Sect. The speed of these four sides was extremely fast. In a few blinks they were still dozens of li away, but in a few blinks, they were already less than 20 li away. Operation failed. Breakout at full force. Hu Wenhai made a prompt decision and roared. Walala! Azure Dragon Hall's forces gathered in four directions. Under Hu Wenhai's lead, they charged toward the southeast like a sharp blade. Can you escape? Kill! An ominous glint appeared in the leader's eyes. With a wave of his hand, countless attacks rained down on Azure Dragon Hall's forces. The speed of the attacks was much faster than their flying speed. In the next instant, the outermost forces of Azure Dragon Hall were torn apart. Roughly speaking, the number of casualties was no less than 50. And this was just the first round of attacks. If there were a few more rounds, the consequences would be unimaginable. Kill our way out. Hu Wenhai's eyes were bloodshot. Right in front of him was the Water Wave Sect. Kill. Killing one is one, killing two is a profit. Boom. 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 Azure Dragon Hall's forces' eyes were all bloodshot. The outermost forces raised their shields one after another, blocking the attacks from the right, left and rear. Then, all of them began to circulate their Zhen Yuan, sending waves of Zhen Yuan toward the Water Wave Sect. Formation, Water Curtain Skyflower. The majority of Water Wave Sect's people cultivated water-attributed martial arts. In the ocean they were always successful. The leader of Water Wave Sect formed seals with both hands, and the people behind him also did the same. In the next instant, a huge water wall condensed in front of them. It was several thousand meters long, several thousand meters tall, and 100 meters thick, blocking the attacks from the Azure Dragon Hall's forces. The water wall was in tatters. It was constantly being destroyed and repaired, but it didn't collapse. Yao Yifeng, Zhuaheng, Xiang Yihui. The six of you. Work with me to break through the water wall and kill our way into Water Wave Sect's forces. Hu Wenhai knew that only by killing his way into the enemy's midst would there be any hope of breaking out. Otherwise, they would be wrapped up like dumplings sooner or later. All right. The others replied solemnly. Mad Wave Chop. Blazing Spear. 7 attacks landed on the water wall, and it finally exploded, turning into thousands of water pillars that shot out in all directions. Charge! Hu Wenhai took the lead and charged. The machete in his hand emitted a huge white blade aura that was unstoppable. Hee, Hu Wenhai, you're dead for sure this time. The Water Wave Sect's forces gathered together. Facing the Azure Dragon Hall's assault, they were disdainful. If they couldn't even kill their opponents like this, they might as well commit suicide. Rumble! A huge water ball condensed and shot toward Hu Wenhai and the Azure Dragon Hall's forces behind him. At this moment, Yao Yifeng, intentionally or not, dashed to the right, dodging the water ball's attack. Pung! The combined attack from hundreds of Water Wave Sect's forces was too fierce. Hu Wenhai was the first to fall, blasted into pieces, while the Azure Dragon Hall's forces behind him had lost at least a third of their forces. As for the remaining, they were falling one after another. They simply couldn't block the combined attack of the other 3 forces. Follow me, charge out. Yao Yifeng led the remaining dozens of people and broke out of the Water Wave Sect's encirclement. After losing half of their forces, they actually succeeded. Chapter 663. Not only did we kill a large number of Azure Dragon Hall's people, we even killed Azure Dragon Hall's deputy, Hu Wenhai. The people of the 4 sects didn't chase after Yao Yifeng's group. Instead, they all stopped and laughed heartily. The leader of Water Wave Sect smiled. In these few years, the number of Dragon God Celestial Palaces, people who died in our hands, should be more than 1,000. I'd like to see how long Dragon God Celestial Palace can last. Let's see whether they nurture experts faster, or we kill them faster. 5th grade sects nurtured astral-reaching experts dozens of times faster than 6th grade sections. It should be known that a 6th grade sect had tens of thousands of people, from elders to janitor disciples. Meanwhile, a 5th grade sect would have hundreds of thousands of people. A peak 5th grade sect like Dragon God Celestial Palace already had more than 1 million people. As long as there were enough resources, astral-reaching experts would be endless, and Sea of Soul realm experts could be easily produced as well. After all, those who could enter 5th grade sects were all geniuses with decent innate talents. The ratio of experts produced by 5th grade sects was extremely high. However, 5th grade sects also had a limit. If their experts continued to die like this, it wouldn't take more than a few years for their vitality to be greatly damaged. In less than 10 years, there would be a gap between the younger generation and the younger generation. Once a gap appeared, it would be a sign of decline. We can only blame Dragon God's Celestial Palace for being too powerful. Our 4 sects only occupy 40% of Eastern Shallow Ocean's resources, while Dragon God's Celestial Palace occupies 50%. In the long run, we'll never be able to catch up to Dragon God's Celestial Palace. We don't have as many experts either. The leader of Whirlwind Gate caressed the blade in his hand, his gaze cold. Alright, this encirclement is over. Dragon God's Celestial Palace has suffered a disastrous loss. I don't think they'll make any big movements in the near future. Let's go back and report. Sky Eagle Cult's people left in the sky. Soon after, Waterwave Sect, Black King Gate, and Whirlwind Gate's people also left, leaving behind a blood-dyed ocean and hundreds of mutilated corpses. Several thousand li away, Yaoi Feng and dozens of Azure Dragon Hall's experts, who had just escaped from death, stopped. Damn it! Where did these bastards get the news? How did we get ambushed instead? Even the deputy is dead. An Azure Dragon Hall expert roared with a hoarse voice. Someone must have leaked it. Otherwise, the news wouldn't have leaked. If I find out who leaked the secret, I'll definitely make him die a horrible death. A strange look flashed in Yaoi Feng's eyes. He said in a deep and sorrowful voice, "Only the Hall Master and the Deputy Hall Masters know about this kind of secret operation. I think the possibility of them snitching is very low. Hall Master, Vice Hall Master." Hearing this, everyone fell silent. They trusted the Azure Dragon Hall leader, but they had doubts about the Vice Hall leaders. After all, the Azure Dragon Hall had lost too many people this time, which was equivalent to 1/7 of the Azure Dragon Hall's total manpower. If this happened a few more times, the Azure Dragon Hall would probably only exist in name. When I return this time, I will make a trip to the Heavenly Palace's headquarters and get the Elders' Assembly to send people to investigate the Azure Dragon Palace and find the mole. Right. If we do not find out who the mole is, the people of the Azure Dragon Palace will not be at ease. Yi Chen stayed at the Morong family for a week. During this time, besides enjoying the world with Morong Qingcheng, he would occasionally spar with Morong Qingcheng, pointing out her weaknesses in battle. Because of his powerful soul power, Yi Chen could easily sense some of the details. He knew how to get the upper hand and suppress the opponent. In this aspect, no one could compete with him. Her profound sense martial arts had improved drastically, and Morong Qingcheng just happened to be lacking an opponent to train with. After 1 week, her battling power had increased steadily, and she might even be a bit more powerful than Bai Minghui now. If she were to rearrange the master-level warrior ranking, she would at least be in the top 20. During the spar with Morong Qingcheng, Yi Chen did not just sit around either. His main sword spell had already reached the 2nd level. With just a thought, he would be able to control his flying sword to kill his enemies. Within 300 steps, it would be no different from within 10 steps. Even Morong Qingcheng, who had an amazing speed talent, would have a hard time avoiding Yi Chen's flying sword. In terms of killing speed, it was twice as fast as the spiritual sword. After 1 week, Yi Chen had returned to the Yi family, while Morong Qingcheng had calmed down and started to create her own profound sense martial art. In the sky, a white satin-like light flashed past. It was as sharp as a sword, looking like an illusionary flying sword. The white light arrived in the sky above the Windy Nation. A small nation, a small family, and yet a rare sword art genius has been born. It is indeed not easy, but the tallest tree in the forest will be blown away by the wind. It is not a good thing for a young man to not know how to be reserved. Let me teach him a lesson. The white light paused for a second before increasing its speed again, flying toward the Misty Mountain. Misty Mountain, Yi family. Yi Chen was teaching a disciple of the Yi family. This Yi family disciple was none other than Yi Xiaoshui, who had given Yi Chen the inspiration and helped him complete his gold pattern. Although Yi Xiaoshui's cultivation talent was ordinary, his sword art talent was quite good. Last time, the Sky Water Sword spell that Yi Chen had given him, he had already trained to the 6th movement. The first 5 movements were all 60 to 70% complete, and the 6th movement was also 50% complete. While watching Yi Xiaoshui practice, Yi Chen said, "Soft sword art can confuse the enemy, making them unable to see the sword's trajectory. But no matter if it is soft sword art or any other sword art, it should not be flashy without any substance. Your sword art is not bad, but it is still a bit superficial." The Sky Water Sword spell focuses on 3 words: softness, entanglement, and ruthlessness. You have achieved softness, but entanglement and ruthlessness are still a bit lacking. Entanglement requires you to use softness, and ruthlessness is the ultimate form, like a whirlpool, devouring the enemy. Yi Xiaoshui regarded Yi Chen as a legend, so he listened very carefully and learned very seriously. He could feel that although his sword art did not improve substantially, he still had a high chance of winning against an opponent at the same level. This was the difference between sword art attainments and actual combat. Yi Chen's on-the-spot teaching could at least save him a lot of hard work. Alright, that's enough. Yi Chen suddenly stopped Yi Xiaoshui and looked at the sky. In the sky, a beam of white light was flying straight over. The sharp sword qi resonated with the sky, as if it had become one with the sky. This person, Yi Xiaoshui, held his breath, and his skin felt cold. Master Sky Sword. Yi Chen did not need to guess to know who it was. Among the top swordsmen of the older generation, Master Sky Sword, Master Blood Sword, and Master Demon Sword were the most famous. These sword masters had different styles. Master Blood Sword's sword art was cruel and merciless, bloody and murderous. Master Demon Sword's sword art was strange and unpredictable. Master Sky Sword's sword art was even more amazing. It was like a great pressure, unstoppable. Without a doubt, this person was Master Sky Sword. The white light's speed was extremely fast, and it soon arrived in the sky above Yi Chen's courtyard. It was a white-haired old man. His clothes fluttered as he gently landed on the lakeside, standing beside a large tree. The white-haired old man sized up Yi Chen and was slightly surprised. He could see that Yi Chen carried a great momentum, and this momentum was different from his own. It was a kind of pressure that came from the unseen. Connecting this with the previous incident, the white-haired old man was sure that this was the other party's sword sect momentum. It has only been a few days, and he already has the sword sect momentum. The white-haired old man frowned slightly. A person's faith was very terrifying. Some bodhisattvas in temples were clearly inanimate objects, but after receiving a lot of worship, they could produce some strange things and gradually gain spirituality. Of course, this spirituality did not mean that it was omnipotent and could satisfy the wishes of the believers. It could only allow the sincere believers to have pure thoughts and not have any distracting thoughts. This was what was known as faith nourishment. The title of Sword Sect was the #1 title under Sword King. Since ancient times, it had been an incomparably glorious title. The significance it represented was very great. Accepting the title of Sword Sect would give one the Sword Sect momentum, and other swordsmen would be suppressed if they encountered it. Good, not bad. You are Yi Chen? The white-haired old man slowly exhaled, his eyes shining. Yi Chen nodded. You are Master Sky Sword, right? This old man is. Master Sky Sword cleared his throat and said, the title of Sword Sect has not been obtained by anyone for hundreds of years. Do you know why? Yi Chen knew some of the reasons, but he still said, I'd like to hear the details. Before entering life and death realm, Sword Sect is the ultimate glory of a sword artist. For hundreds of years, it's not that there hasn't been a #1 sword artist. On the contrary, there have been them all the time. However, none of them dared to call themselves Sword Sect, because no sword artist could hold on to the title forever. Not being able to hold on to the title is a humiliation to the Sword Sect. Therefore, it's still too early for you to call yourself Sword Sect. I didn't inform anyone this time, And I don't want to bully the weak. How about this? Hand over the title of Sword Sect, and I won't make things difficult for you. Yi Chen smiled. My view is different from yours. The reason why there hasn't been a sword sect for hundreds of years is not because those people thought they couldn't hold on to the title, but because they lacked courage and responsibility. Without even this bit of courage, even if they had the strength, they wouldn't be worthy of being a sword sect. The so-called sword sect is both internal and external. One must have both strength and courage. Since they have strength and courage, why can't they be called sword sect? Master Sky Sword's eyes narrowed. Seems like words are useless. Since you think you have the strength, I'll have to wake you up. Please enlighten me. I'll make sure you return empty-handed. Yi Chen wasn't the slightest bit intimidated by the opponent's name. In his eyes, the opponent was only a powerful sword artist, and he was a sword sect. Hee, this is the first time I've seen such an arrogant youngster. Master Sky's sword laughed out of extreme anger. With a wave of his hand, several leaves suddenly flew out from a nearby tree. These leaves revolved around his palm, and with a flick of his wrist, the leaves flew out. As the saying went, even a flying flower or a plucked leaf could injure the enemy. Swish, swish, swish. These leaves were no longer ordinary leaves. Not only did they contain Master Sky Sword's formidable Zhen Yuan and sword intent, but they also contained a unique profound. Without any exaggeration, these leaves could instantly kill an ordinary master. Moreover, this was only Master Sky Sword's initial probing. Buzz! Yi Chen's body remained motionless. Suddenly, a golden ripple blossomed around his body, shattering the invading leaves. Chapter 664. Sky Sword Style White Flood Dragon. Master Sky Sword faintly creased his brows. The golden ripples emitting from Yi Chen's body gave him a misconception, as if the latter would pounce on him at any moment and brazenly attack. Raising his index and middle fingers, Master Sky Sword slashed in the air, and a white silk-like sword chi shot out. This sword chi extended and extended indefinitely, looking like a small white flood dragon shrouded in white light. Draw your sword. As he spoke, another golden ripple burst out from Yi Chen's body. The ripple was extremely powerful, and when the white flood dragon sword chi came into contact with it, it immediately created thousands of sparks. Then its direction changed, bypassing Yi Chen's body and shooting into the center of the lake. Rumble! The lake undulated up and down, and shortly after, a water column hundreds of meters thick erupted, erupting thousands of meters into the sky. When it fell, the entire cloudmist mountain seemed to be raining. Looking at the lake again, the water level had dropped by dozens of meters, almost completely drained. Good. Worthy of being a sword prodigy that only appears once in 1,000 years. To be able to research such a strange protective chi. How could Master Sky Sword not see that Yi Chen was using his body as a sword, releasing a move that was somewhere between offense and defense? This move not only had a powerful offensive power, but it also had a divergent effect. Any attack that approached would be weakened by 30%, and then pushed away by the divergent force, deviating from its direction. The path of the sword is like rowing a boat against the current. If you don't move forward, you will fall back. I am improving at every moment, so I dare to call myself Sword Master. Yi Chen stretched out his hand, and the rain in the sky suddenly converged, turning into a water dragon, pouring back into the lake, filling it up again. Hearing this, Master Sky Sword suddenly felt a little regretful. He didn't have any great enmity with Yi Chen, nor did he have any gratitude towards Yi Chen. This time, he had come here purely because he was dissatisfied that the title of Sword Master had been given to a young man. He could tolerate being forgotten by the world, but he couldn't tolerate the title of Sword Master being tarnished. In his eyes, the title of Sword Master was sacred, and it was precisely because of this that he couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of impurity. However, after exchanging blows with Yi Chen, he discovered that compared to the information he had obtained, Yi Chen was indeed much stronger. If he had known that Yi Chen's potential was so strong, and was improving at every moment, he might have considered it. Of course, regardless of whether he regretted it or not, The arrow was already knocked on the bowstring, and it had to be released. As long as he could defeat Yi Chen, this trip would not be in vain. Clang! Grandmaster Heavenly Sword unsheathed his sword, and as soon as it was unsheathed, it brought with it a sharp murderous aura as it attacked Yi Chen. As the sword slashed out, the space in front of it distorted, and the multicolored light made people feel as if they had entered an illusory realm. This is my residence. Let's go to the sky. Yi Chen didn't receive the attack. He bent his knees and turned into a flash of sword light as he soared into the sky, narrowly avoiding Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's attack. Pop! Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's sword chi was extremely condensed. Although its destructive power was great, its area of destruction was not wide, so it only left behind an unfathomably deep black hole at the lakeside. Seeing that Yi Chen had left, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword waved his sleeves, and a white light surged out. His body turned illusory and real, and he chased after Yi Chen like a white silk. After the two of them left, Yi Xiaoshui, who was several hundred meters away, panted heavily as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Wiping off his cold sweat, he raised his head with a pale complexion and looked at the two people chasing after him in the sky. Too strong, 100 times stronger than me, 1,000 times stronger. Just a random wisp of their aura can make me feel like I'm close to death. If I can be 1/10 as strong as them in this life, my life will not be in vain. No, I might not be able to see a battle of this level in my lifetime. Even if I can't understand it, it can still broaden my horizons and improve my state of mind. I can't miss it. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword and Yi Chen had already disappeared into the eastern horizon. Yi Xiaoshui gritted his teeth and chased after them at full speed. After leaving the Yi family, he soared into the sky and doubled his speed. After a cup of tea's time, Yi Xiaoshui finally saw the figures of Yi Chen and Grandmaster Heavenly Sword in a small mountain range. At this time, this mountain range, which was used as a training ground for the Yi family's descendants, was already riddled with holes. Sword scars covered a large area, sharp and narrow, and the sword intent was still lingering. Because of the distance, Yi Xiaoshui couldn't even see the appearance and movements of the two clearly, but this was enough. In the sky above the mountain range, the two figures constantly clashed, and sparks flew everywhere. Sky sword style sky cleaving. After another collision, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword used the momentum to fly above Yi Chen, and then he and his sword became one, slashing down. Before the sword arrived, the majestic and condensed sword pressure split the center of the mountain range in half, leaving a clear sword scar that was hundreds of meters deep. An extreme speed sword. Yi Chen almost couldn't catch the trajectory of this sword. Raising his center of gravity, Yi Chen raised his sword to meet the attack, using the spiritual sword. Dang! The two, one above and one below their swords, collided. Buzz! With the two as the center, circles of spatial ripples spread out, and the air became as viscous as mercury, incomparably heavy. Even time seemed to stop. Yi Xiaoshui, who was dozens of miles away, also felt that time had become much longer, and his thinking speed had decreased. Rumble! After the extreme silence, an earth-shattering explosion rang out, and the shockwave crazily swept out. The tall peaks in the mountain range were all blown off, and a layer of them was shaved off. All the demonic beasts were bleeding from the 7 apertures of their heads and died. Fortunately, there was usually no one here, or else it would have led to a tragedy. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword and Yi Chen separated upon contact, and both retreated. However, Yi Chen only retreated a few hundred steps before recovering, while Grandmaster Heavenly Sword kept retreating, unable to control his momentum. Thunder Devour. Withstanding the remaining shockwave, Yi Chen's body streaked across the sky like a sword light, and a sword carrying a silver thunder ball smashed toward Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. A destructive aura filled the sky. Heavenly Sword style sword array. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's face was filled with shock. 18 Zhen Yuan longswords rushed out of his body, forming a sword array, and its power increased by several times as it faced Yi Chen. Kacha! The silver thunder ball and the sword array collided, and the sky suddenly lost its color. Only silver lightning and sword chi could be seen flying everywhere, as if it was the end of the world. Such a huge commotion couldn't have gone unnoticed. From all directions, people could be seen rushing over from time to time. In the northwest were people from Yi family and South Rudra sect, and in other directions, there were also people from the pugilistic world. In a short period of time, all the people nearby had arrived. There were no less than 1,000 people, and it seemed like the situation was getting more and more intense. Xiaoshui, what's going on? Yi Tianhao and Shen Yuqing came together, and behind them was a large group of people from Yi family. There were Yi family elders, Yi family members, and Yi family disciples. There were at least 300 to 400 people. Yi Xiaoshui cupped his fists and said respectfully, "Family leader, mistress." Soon after, he told them everything he knew. "Grandmaster Heavenly Sword, I've heard of him. He was one of the top sword artists 100 years ago. I didn't expect him to be the one fighting Qin Er." Yi Tianhao frowned. "Will Qin Er be in danger?" Shen Yuqing said worriedly. Yi Tianhao shook his head slightly. "It seems like they are evenly matched. Moreover, doesn't Qin Er know the defensive sword art? He hasn't used it yet, so he should have some confidence in himself." Although Grandmaster Heavenly Sword shocked Yi Tianhao, he trusted Yi Qin, so Yi Tianhao didn't think there would be any problem. A martial artist's potential had a limit. Although Grandmaster Heavenly Sword was one of the top sword artists 100 years ago, without any fortuitous encounter, he would be stuck at this level for the rest of his life. The younger one was, the higher the cultivation base, the better. This way, it would be easier to break through one's original realm. After 100 years, there was basically no hope. Even stepping into half-step king realm was an extravagant hope. Otherwise, the number of kings on True Spirit continent would increase by at least 10 times. That's true. Shen Yuqing let out a sigh of relief. They knew a thing or two about the defensive sword art. As far as they were concerned, it was simply a miraculous skill. Who's fighting Yi Qin? This person is so powerful. He can actually fight evenly with Yi Qin. Yi Qin is number 1 on the master's ranking, titled Grandmaster Sword. The master's ranking doesn't record experts above the age of 250. Could this person be over 250 years old? Could he be a famous sword artist in the past? There weren't many who recognized Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. They couldn't be blamed for being ignorant. The main reason was that Grandmaster Heavenly Sword had retired for a long time, and there weren't many who recognized him. Some well-informed people vaguely understood the cause and effect. This white-haired old man had certainly come for the title of Grandmaster Sword. Only the title of Grandmaster Sword could make these old monsters make a move. "Yi Qin, I'm going all out." Grandmaster Heavenly Sword didn't intend to drag things out. "Bring it on." Yi Qin prepared himself. Sky sword style, star beheading sword. The autumn water longsword was raised high, and the sky above the mountain range suddenly darkened. One after another, flickering star phantoms appeared out of nowhere. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's white hair fluttered in the wind as he furiously slashed down. All the star phantoms shattered one after another, as if a single sword had shattered countless stars. Golden hurricane. At the same time as the stars shattered, a golden ripple rapidly extended, as if a golden river had split the starry sky into two. Bang! The violent explosion caused the heaven and earth to shake and space to distort. The area where the two were standing turned fuzzy, and everything was stretched and distorted. The next moment, a resplendent radiance erupted like a star exploding, accompanied by golden specks. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword sucked in a deep breath and pushed his protective Zhen Yuan to the limit. His entire being was sent flying, and as he flew, golden specks would fall on his protective Zhen Yuan from time to time, producing countless sparks and loud clangs. Every time a loud clang rang out, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's complexion would turn a shade paler. Yi Qin's situation was more or less the same as Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. He had a half-step supreme grade defensive armor, and so did Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. The difference was that Grandmaster Heavenly Sword didn't have a dragon bone defense, and so his blood and chi suffered some damage, causing his complexion to turn pale. On the other hand, Yi Qin was much more relaxed, and was only sent flying by the resplendent radiance. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword, if you stop here, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. While retreating, Yi Chun was still able to speak. After a few blinks of an eye, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword calmed his blood and replied, "You and I are about the same. I can't defeat you, and you can't defeat me." He had no choice but to admit that he couldn't defeat Yi Chun with his strength, and this shocked him greatly. According to the information he had obtained, Yi Chun's strength hadn't been this strong during the battle with Duguju. It had only been a few days, yet his strength had improved to a certain extent. "I'm afraid not." As he spoke, Yi Chun pointed out with his left hand, and the emerald longsword at his waist automatically unsheathed. With a flicker of sword light, it instantly arrived before Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. Under his horrified gaze, the emerald longsword pierced through his protective Zhen Yuan and slashed at his armor. Puff! Spurting out blood, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword retreated once more, his eyes filled with fear. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.